Welcome to the It's Time for Me podcast series with me, Caroline Mead. Each episode aims to bring you some help, guidance, and tips and techniques on how to live a balanced life. Don't forget to come on over to itstimefore.me and subscribe for your daily dose of mindfulness, meditation, and motivation. So welcome everyone to a great new podcast episode with the wonderful Kathryn O'Halloran. Kathryn is a mindfulness teacher based in the Dublin Wicklow area of Ireland who has a clear vision and a desire to help people cope with stress, difficulty, and to cultivate more joy and resilience. She founded Mindful Way and her website mindfulway.ie in 2013, and since then has provided mindfulness training for almost 1,200 people aged from 4 to 80 within corporate settings, schools, addiction centres, and everything in between. Most of Kathryn's work is with adults teaching a programme called the MBSR, which is the Mindfulness Based Stress Reduction Programme. I'm delighted to have experienced Kathryn teachings myself back in 2015 during a particularly difficult time in my own life, and I found the 8-week course gave me the skills to heal and to deal with a situation in a really positive and life-changing way. So after that long introduction, I'm thrilled and very grateful to welcome you, Kathryn. Thank you so much for joining me today.
You're so welcome. Thanks so much for having me.
Brilliant. So, Kathryn, if you'd like to start by just telling us how you were introduced to mindfulness and why you then made the decision to go and study to become a teacher of mindfulness.
Okay, so it goes back a few years. I'm in my 40s now, and it was probably around my 20s that I was beginning to hear about meditation and hearing that meditation could help us kind of find more peace in our minds. And at the time, this sounded really good to me because it wasn't, peace in the mind wasn't something that I was very familiar with at all. Okay. In my teens and early 20s, I'd struggled quite a lot with anxiety, particularly social anxieties and low mood, low self-esteem, low confidence. So, doing something that would help me to find some peace and calm in my head sounds really good. So I started going to centres that taught meditation, mostly Buddhist centres at the time, just local centres, and learned how to meditate. And then over the next kind of 5 to 10 years, my practice really developed because as I started to see benefits unfolding from this practice, my commitment really deepened. Mm-hmm. And so much so that I ended up kind of leaving my career in nursing. Nice. And over years, noticing the benefits that the practice was giving to me, my commitment deepened. And so much so that I decided I would actually give up my work as a nurse and move into the area of mindfulness. Mm. And also from nursing in the last kind of 5 or 10 years, when I was nursing, I really became interested in stress and the effects that stress has on us all, on myself and patients that I was meeting. Mm-hmm. And I noticed that there was an increase in the people who were actually experiencing stress and listing stress as something that they feel, on their admission sheet. So even if they were in hospital for something other than stress-related conditions, that they were actually taking things like headaches, irritable bowel, insomnia, anxiety on their admission sheets. And I was really noticing this, and I thought, well, I have this practice that I'm doing, and it really helps me in this area. So that's when I decided I would move into the area of mindfulness training and resilience training. So that's my journey with mindfulness so far.
That's fantastic. And it is really interesting that you said that on the admission sheets you were seeing the increase of people actually putting stress down. And I think for a lot of us, stress is a part of life, unfortunately it is. But I think we can definitely learn to respond or react to it in different ways. And I think that's where we can overcome some of the stress. But when you moved into your mindfulness practice and obviously studied it and began to teach it, what did you find were the benefits for people then who attended, say, your mindfulness-based stress reduction program? what were they finding in their day-to-day life, or even what did you find in your day-to-day life by bringing those techniques in on a daily basis?
Yeah. So people generally report feeling more at ease, at ease in their daily life with, as you mentioned, the stresses and the strains and the demands that come with, that are a normal part of life.
Yeah.
Feeling softer or happier in themselves, so less critical. We all have, quite an inner critic who that can be like a voice in our head that judging, a judging kind of voice.
Yeah.
So it can help to soften some of those self-judgments. It helps our relationships with others and also with ourselves. So there's so many benefits from, physical benefits as well. So if people have physical symptoms from pain to maybe symptoms from some chronic illnesses, it can certainly help to alleviate some of those symptoms. And also the psychological benefits of just feeling a greater sense of well-being, feeling more in control, which is a funny one because we're never really completely in control of our lives, but just having a sense of being in control, so less overwhelm, a sense of being more kind of having more of a say in our life, and being able to respond to what's happening rather than react. So you mentioned the reacting and responding. That's a very important aspect of this whole practice, is noticing when we automatically react to things. And realizing that actually we have more say here, that we can actually choose to respond to whatever's happening in our lives in a conscious way, maybe to respond in a healthier way for ourselves, or in a more kind of discerning or wise or skillful way. So it helps us to notice when we're reacting and to actually respond to what's happening.
I think what's really interesting is, I know myself when I would have gone to do the 8-week course with yourself, that I was looking for a way to, quieten the mind and get over some stresses that were going on. But I think what you've pointed out there, which is something I found myself from it, that, stress is, I suppose, something hard to define, because where is it coming from? Is it being created by ourselves? Is it coming from outside influences? And what you've pointed out there with the benefits is that mindfulness doesn't just help release stress, but it's actually softening that judgmental mind that you talked about, that we all definitely have, and some have it, more than others, or more often than others, I should say. Helps our relationships, helps our physical body. So there's so many different aspects to this, which is quite interesting, because I think sometimes if people don't fully understand what mindfulness is, they mightn't relate it to having that knock-on effect into the rest of their life. When you mentioned there about feeling as much in control as you can, that's definitely a really big area I would find working with clients as well, is that when people are feeling like they're not in control, it creates, like you said, that overwhelm and anxiety, and then they can make decisions from that place of anxiety, which mightn't be great for their life, and then that can bring more stress, and it's kind of, you get stuck in a catch-22 situation, which can be difficult. I suppose for people who want to know what mindfulness is in, I suppose, layman's terms, or a more simplistic view, how would you really describe that to them? Because I think sometimes, and I often hear it from clients as well, oh, I must do that, or that sounds great, but it sounds like something that's going to take them loads of time, and they'll have to really, yes, they'll have to commit to it, but they think of it as something so big that they don't really get started in it. But like you said there, so many very subtle and simple benefits, but for somebody who doesn't really understand what it is, it might seem even overwhelming to start the process,
Yeah, and thanks for bringing that up. And it's really interesting, because there are so many benefits, and this practice weaves into so many areas of our life that it can seem quite a big, or maybe an overwhelming practice of where do I even get started. But the thing is, the practice itself is actually really simple. So it doesn't mean that it's easy, but it actually is quite simple. So all mindfulness is being aware of the present moment in a non-judgmental way. So it's like focusing on what you're doing when you're doing it, being in the present moment, noticing when your attention wanders off into thoughts, distractions, past, present, future, wanders around, daydreams, and just calling the attention back to what's happening right now. What am I doing right now? Noticing what's happening right now in a kind of open, non-judgmental way. So I'll share with you a definition by a really well-known teacher. Actually, he developed the main program I work with, the mindfulness-based stress reduction program. His name is John Kathryn. And he says that mindfulness is the awareness that arises through paying attention on purpose in the present moment, non-judgmentally. So it's a bit long-winded, but it's basically two aspects. It's awareness of the present moment without judging it. And the judgment is such an important aspect of it. So most people are aware that it's about being present, but very often our minds are automatically judging everything, what we like, what we don't like, what we want more of, what we don't want more of. And this kind of continuous stream of judgments is actually creating a lot of tension in the mind. So when we can learn how to be with things as they are, without kind of judging or wishing they were different, that by itself brings a lot of relief and reduction in stress. Even if what we're dealing with is actually not so pleasant, it still reduces the stress. And just to really bring it back to how do we even start with this, it sounds so kind of effective or big. We can just start right here with the breath, for example. So the breath in our bodies is, so our breathing is always happening in the present moment. So we can't tune into a breath that we breathed yesterday. We can only tune into a breath that's happening from moment to moment right now. So if we even just stop and just, feel the breath coming in and out of the body, in and out of the body, and notice that every so often the attention will wander away, because that's natural, and we just bring it back to the next breath. We begin again without judging. That is how we cultivate all these benefits that we've just mentioned are through this practice. I've just mentioned focusing on the breath, but it may be, sometimes we focus on other sensations in the body, or we might focus on the sounds that are happening right now. So something that's happening right now, and just bringing the attention back to that object time and time again without judgment. That is the whole practice. It's incredible, really, that it actually leads to so many benefits.
And
now, sorry, go ahead there,
No, go on.
Oh, yeah, so it sounds so simple, and it is, it's this simple practice. But what I've just described is actually really challenging. Because we have these wandering minds, we get distracted, we have all sorts of thoughts pulling us into the future or reminding us of something in the past that we're going over. So it's actually not so easy to stay in the present moment. So it's a practice. It's our training. It's something that we do over and over again. It's not something that we kind of take an 8-week course in and then that's it, we're mindful. I've been this for, 10 or 15 years, probably about 15 years now. And it's still something that I practice every day.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I think one thing I was going to say there was about the judgment, and I think that is the hardest part. And like you said, our minds are judging all the time, and judging ourselves, judging others. And I definitely think a lot of uneasiness in ourselves comes from, like you were saying, the way we think things should be or how somebody should be. We get very caught up in how that person treated me or what they said or, the way work is. And I suppose it's normal, like it's part of our mind. But when you're in a situation, let's say, that is very stressful, and and stress comes and goes. So situations can be stressful and then they might resolve and move on, or you accept it and you have to move on with it. But for somebody who's in a difficult situation that they know is going to be quite prolonged, maybe they're dealing with somebody in their life who's very sick, or they're dealing with, a bad work situation where somebody may be creating a problem for them, or maybe they're dealing with a financial situation that they know, even though will resolve itself, it might be going to take a couple of years, let's say even. How can people use mindfulness to reduce the stress? So the stress is still going to be there, but how can they use this practice to help them, I suppose, cope with it better? You talked about resilience earlier on, what would you advise around that?
And even what you've described there, this kind of, like an ongoing stressor is very, very common. So we do, as you say, we have, acute stressors that kind of come and go in the day, but very often there is something deeper that we're dealing with, maybe an illness or somebody who's not well or a stress at work or something like that. So so let me maybe describe this in a kind of a story of how mindfulness can help us with this. So if you can imagine this for a few moments, if a person is struck by an arrow, okay, so a bow and arrow, if someone's struck by an arrow, is it painful? Yes. Okay, so this is painful if someone's struck by an arrow. Now, if the person is struck by a second arrow, is it more painful? Yes, absolutely. A second arrow even hurts more. Mm-hmm. So this first arrow is actually representing the stress, the strains, the things that happen in our lives that very often are outside of our control. They're just about being human and having this, human life and interacting with others and all the things that come with it. Mm-hmm. That's the first arrow. And by itself, it can cause stress and it can be, painful. Mm-hmm. Now, the second arrow represents our reaction to the first arrow. It's our judgments, or maybe our resistance, or our thoughts of not wanting it to be this way, wishing it were different, denying, maybe pushing away. That's the second arrow. And that one, we actually shoot ourselves with. This is not a fault thing. It's not our fault at all. It's just the way it happens. But mindfulness actually helps us to notice that we're doing that we're shooting a second arrow, that we're actually kind of creating a whole other layer of tension and stress around the already difficult situation. Okay. So with practice, it's coming back to the present moment, noticing, what's happening in our minds. Are we shooting that second arrow? Can help us to let it go, or to reduce it at least, so that, that can help us to reduce some of the stress and tension that we feel around the situation. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So I suppose it's knowing the situation is there, but I think sometimes if a situation is what it is, even though it can be traumatic or painful, that putting ourselves in a place of stress every day about it isn't changing the outcome of that, but it is making us feel, overwhelmed or anxious, which then, like we mentioned earlier, can have a ripple effect outward to the rest of your life as well. So then this stressful situation now is creating other stressful situations. So I think what you explained there is really good about what we can do for ourselves and not do to ourselves, I think that's a really lovely story that you told, and put it in a really gentle way for people to understand it and more particularly to apply it. Like you said earlier, it's the awareness of the present moment, and I suppose the awareness of maybe what we're doing to ourselves in in each moment, because you only have each moment as you go through. And I think, definitely I'd see a lot of people, and through my own life, I used to struggle really badly with anxiety about things that I wasn't in control of, or thinking things were going to happen that would never happen. And you just spend a lot of your day in that kind of state. And I used to find when doing that, it would actually be creating more hassle in other places because of my perspective on things or my decisions around things. So I feel like the practice of mindfulness is brilliant to make you aware and connect to where you are right now. And that brings a sense of ease and a sense of, I suppose, balance a little bit as well. So I think that's a really, really great story, and I think people will relate to that as well. I suppose, sorry, were you going to say something there?
Just another example of that, just a kind of practical application even of the first and second arrow. But sometimes some people, can grasp concepts if they're abstract, but others might need a kind of rooted in something practical. So just an example would be, if we're awake at night, can't sleep, and we're awake in the middle of the night. Mm-hmm. So the first arrow would be, in that situation, would be that, it's uncomfortable being awake in the middle of the night. That by itself is uncomfortable enough or difficult enough. Mm-hmm. The second arrow is when we start worrying about the next day. How am I going to be? Oh my goodness, if I don't get enough sleep, how many hours am I going to sleep now? What if I, can't cope tomorrow? Or this isn't good, or I don't like this. That's all the second arrow. If we actually lie in the bed and maybe tune into the comfort of the pillow, or maybe the duvet feels good on our skin, or maybe the bed is the right temperature, or maybe that if so, even if we don't end up getting a full night's sleep or even a half night's sleep, we won't have as much stress the next morning. If we don't, does that kind of make
no, it really does. And I think, like you're saying, use simple things around you to take your focus off that. So to say, I can feel the pillow behind me. I'm grateful for the pillow behind me and the comfort of it. So it's kind of distracting you as well and bringing you back into where you actually are in that moment, So I think that's a really good example as well. And I suppose there's two other things I wanted to ask you about. So I think I'll ask you the first one is, on the flip side of stress and discomfort, we also have the element of joy. And, you spoke about wanting to help people, cultivate more joy in their life. And I'm a huge believer in following your joy. And I believe when we're in a place of joy, we can create great things because we're coming from a happier, lighter place in ourselves. So how can mindfulness help people recognize joy or cultivate more joy in their own life?
Yeah, I love it. And I love how you said recognize joy, because that's what it is, to be honest. So, our attention, where does our attention go? So when our attention is wandering around, and studies tell us that our attention is wandering away from the present moment about half the time, so about 50% of the time. And also this wonderful study that was done by Harvard scientists showed us that when our attention is wandering away from the present moment, very often it's wandering to something unpleasant. So it's wandering to something we need to do, or something that's bothered us, or an irritation, or a worry, something like that. So by just being present, by bringing our attention into the present moment, by being present more often, it's actually an easier place to hang out very often, the present moment. So there's more kind of pleasant and joy within the present moment. So that's one of the ways. The other thing is that we have the way our brain is designed is very much to keep us safe, to help us kind of protect us from danger. The brain helps us to perceive threats and to kind of mobilize the stress reaction system in the body. But it is quite tuned into threats. It's kind of, in a way, scanning to see if there's something wrong, okay? And so it's often caused a negativity bias in the brain. Now, it kind of happens in everyone's brains, but in some people's more than others. But when we know this, we can actually practice bringing some balance into the brain by deciding to intentionally focus on what's okay right now, what's actually going well right now, what's feeling pleasant or positive right now. So in any moment, we could probably list off a few things that we don't like about our life or we don't like about ourselves. But can we list off 5 or 10 things that are actually okay? So sometimes it takes a bit more work to actually list these things off, but it's a really worthwhile practice to do every single day, to call to mind things that are okay. They don't have to be extraordinary. They don't have to be, wonderful, but everyday ordinary things. So even right now, I'm sitting here and I can feel that, it's cold outside, but I have a radiator on, so I'm feeling the warmth of the radiator. Just something like that, by bringing my attention to the fact that I'm feeling warm right now, even though it's cold outside, is something to be grateful for. And when we practice this over and over and over, we begin to recognize the joys, the pleasant stuff, the comforts more spontaneously, more naturally.
Yeah, and I think that's it. It's that it becomes so natural to you after time of that practice. And like you said there, even for someone who may not feel like there's anything good in their life, you can start with the radiator. It's hot. Or like you mentioned, even talking about the arrows and the stress and the person lying in bed at night time, wide awake, they can focus on and be grateful for the comfort of their bed, or the heat of their bed, or the heat of their duvet. So it's interesting, because one of the other things I wanted to ask you about was this element of time. And I think really you've shown through this whole conversation that this can be done at any place, at any time, in any moment, because I think we are living in a very busy world, and we're experiencing an increase in busyness and burnout and stress. And I find it very interesting in in terms of the work that I do, that I would have people, make the time, let's say, to, you know, think about what they want, let's say, and be happy to talk about what they would like to happen in their life, but they find it more difficult to, say, utilize that time to spend 1 minute to focus on the good in their life, or to practice a mindfulness technique. So I think sometimes we, like you said, the brain, and from that Harvard study, naturally tends towards what's going wrong, and we're putting focus on into that. And I would, experience, and I say to myself, oh, I don't have time, or I'll do that tomorrow. Tomorrow I'll start all of these things. But yet, how long do we maybe aimlessly scroll through social media, or we're watching television, or we're spending time engaging in maybe negative conversations or things like that? So I suppose time really isn't an excuse when we look at how you've explained how you can do it. We might use that as an excuse when it might feel like it's something we don't want to go towards, but you can actually do this in a moment. You can do it right now while you're listening to this interview,
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, in any moment.
In any moment.
So there's kind of two parts to, if somebody's interested in bringing mindfulness into their lives, there's kind of two parts to the practice, and one is informal, and even right now as we're speaking, we can be practicing mindfulness, mindful listening when I'm listening to you, or mindful talking when I'm talking, just to bring a consciousness and awareness to what's happening. So that's informal mindfulness. And then there's what's called formal, which is when we actually just set some time aside to do nothing else but to practice. So we might just sit and bring the body to stillness, or lie down and feel the breath, or focus on the body, or be guided in a meditation. And that's really worthwhile as well, because that's kind of really where we're laying foundations, we're training ourselves without having any other distractions. Or, well, it doesn't mean the mind won't get distracted, but at least we're intending to do nothing else at the same time. And, we can start small with this. We don't need to start really big. It's best even if we can start with something that feels doable. So it does take a certain amount of discipline, but I guess most of the time we want the benefits. We have certain things that we want to bring more ease to, so let that be your motivator. And even if you set aside 5 minutes a day, that's a really great start. 5 minutes to just sit and to listen to a guided meditation, or to do it unguided, feel your breath, come back to the breath over and over again. And then maybe over time you might increase it to 10 minutes and so on. But you can start small, absolutely, with a couple of minutes here and there. And also the concept of time and not having enough time, and busyness. We are so busy, for sure. But the thing is, this practice actually helps us to prioritize, to be more effective, productive, to regulate our emotions so that we're not going around and overwhelmed the whole day and making mistakes, creating more stress for ourselves. So it's funny, right? But when I'm particularly busy, I actually practice more. So, so on the days that I'm not feeling so stressed, or, I'm not really busy, I actually do a bit less practice. So because I know that the practice helps me to do the tasks that I have, or to get through the activities of the day.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I think it just shows, even though, like you just said, you can do a course, but it's obviously implementing it. I've done the course, and I do a lot of meditation, and I have taken so many of the techniques from the course with you into my life. And one thing that was coming into my mind actually was when, as part of the 8-week course, you do a day of like a silent day. And when we went, and there was a group of us, we had to have our lunch, and we weren't allowed, not allowed, but if you're advised to not talk and just be in silence. And I kind of thought, how will we organise lunch? Because everyone brought different foods, and it was just really lovely. We didn't speak, but we could communicate without doing that. Everyone shared the food. Everyone, could nearly explain what the food was without talking. And you really just had this lovely presence within yourself, and you could feel that energy through everything, and to think that you can do that in a moment or a few minutes a day, even like you said, starting off with 5 minutes, sounds just very, very relaxing, in the midst of the business, because like you said, we are busy, and that is a fact, and that is the way life is. It's from one thing to the other. I think this has been such an insightful conversation, and I think you're going to have helped so many people because you've put it in such a gentle way and such a simple way, to take that sense of maybe not understanding what mindfulness is, or not knowing how to start the process. And you've given some really, really good examples. So thank you so much for that. I know you have also said that you would like to do a few minutes practice, which I think would be really helpful. So before we start that, Kathryn, I just want to say a massive thank you to you for joining me today, and for sharing so much of your wisdom and your knowledge with everybody, and and for giving your time as well for this. I really appreciate it. And
very welcome. Thanks so much for having me. This is my favorite subject, sure.
Yeah.
This is what I love to talk about this, because it's been so supportive to me that I just want to share it. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, that's just fantastic. And if you want to find out more about Kathryn and her work, you can visit www.mindfulway.ie. So, Kathryn, you had mentioned about doing a short practice for us, which you're really, really good to do. I'm very excited about this. So I'll hand it over to you if you'd like to start this. Okay?
Okay, thanks, Caroline. So let's begin right where we are. Wherever you are is fine. If you can bring the body to stillness and sit, that's wonderful. Don't worry if you can't. So if you can sit, bring your feet right down to the floor and rest your hands. And sitting comfortably, let the back be upright and also relaxed. So feeling the posture of the body. And as we begin this mindfulness practice, just having a check-in to see how you are right now. Getting a sense of how you're feeling, what emotions are contained in this moment. Maybe it's clear, maybe it's not, it doesn't matter, just getting a sense. Noticing any thoughts coming and going in the mind as you sit here, stand here. Don't need to do anything with these thoughts, just being aware of them. They're there. Bringing awareness into the physical body and just getting a sense of how the body is in this moment. Is it a tired body today, or is it an energized body? Carrying tension, or is it comfortable? Getting a very general sense of how the body feels. And noticing if any judgment kind of pops up in the mind, telling you that, you don't want it to be this way, or that there's something you wish were different. Just let that go if possible, and come back to just sensing the body, the direct senses of the body. And now within the body, begin to find the sensations of your breathing. So the natural breath coming in and out of the body. No need to change it. Just allowing the body to breathe by itself and resting your awareness on the movements and sensations. Breath coming in, breath going out. Moment by moment by moment. If you notice that your attention has wandered off the breath and maybe off into sounds or thoughts or somewhere else, that's fine. It's simply just the wandering mind. No need to judge yourself for this. Just returning your attention again to the next breath, feeling the breath coming in and out. Now bringing your awareness back to the sensations of the body, feeling the sensations of the feet in touch with the floor and the backs of the thighs touching the chair if you're sitting down. Noticing any sounds that you can hear in the environment around you. And whenever you're ready, if you've had your eyes closed, you can just begin to allow some light in through your eyes. And just even taking a pause here as you open your eyes, just to feel the taking these couple of minutes to focus our attention on the present moment. Well done. Thanks.
That's lovely, Kathryn. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And a really lovely practice for everyone to do in just 4 minutes there. So thank you very much for that again. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast episode, and I look forward to you joining me again. In the meantime, why don't you come on over to itstimefforme.ie to sign up and subscribe for your daily dose of mindfulness, meditation and motivation.